Greetings, this is Cindy Kennedy, and I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the podcast series at www.livingwithlyme.us. This will keep you up to date on all our new releases. Living with Lyme podcast guests may be discussing very controversial topics. The information contained in these podcasts are from the guests' personal experiences and are their own opinions. These podcasts are intended for information. The opinions expressed are solely the guest's own. Please discuss treatment options with your personal healthcare providers before changing or adding treatments. Enjoy the podcast.
Living with Lyme is brought to you in part by Doctor-Inspired Formulations, a supplement company offering products such as liposomal artemisinin, liposomal oregano oil, and mimosa pudica. Patients can purchase without a prescription, and practitioners can open a wholesale account and carry the products in their office. To learn more, visit DoctorInspiredFormulations.com. That's DoctorInspiredFormulations.com. We'd also like to thank Hopkinton Drug. Many people have unique healthcare needs that mass-produced pharmaceutical medications just can't meet. That's why more people turn to Hopkinton Drug, a locally based compounding and wellness pharmacy. Whether it's Lyme disease, mold illness, thyroid, hormone replacement therapy, pediatrics, or dermatology, Hopkinton Drug's specially trained and licensed pharmacists can create customized compounded medications to meet your specific needs. Shipping is available nationwide. Go to rxandhealth.com, that's rxandhealth.com, or call 800-439-4441. Hopkinton Drug, compounds with care.
Hi, everybody. This is Cindy Kennedy, and I am very excited today. We have a wonderful guest speaker, and I'm very thankful that you've come back and listened to Living with Lyme. We all need to work together to make a brighter future. Today, we have Dr. Neil Nathan. He's been practicing medicine for 47 years and holds board certification in both family practice and pain management. He's also the founding diplomat of the American Board of Integrative Holistic Medicine. The environmentally acquired illnesses, we talk so much about that. We're going to learn more about that. He's authored several books. His most recent, Toxic, was a labor of love. We're going to find out more about that. And Dr. Nathan is here with me, and he's not only going to talk about his book, he's going to teach us how do we make ourselves not so toxic. I'm so happy to have you join me today.
Hey, thank you, Cindy. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is wonderful. You know, we're going to talk a little bit about the book, but I'm just going to say to my listeners that flipping through the book, I looked at these little taglines that you have, and they are very cute. So I think that just brings us to the nature of your personality to have some underlying humor in there. A couple of them was them, let's see, their mold in them hills, or their hills, and then one was fee fi fo fum. So I'm just curious about where those came from.
Well, since the book is largely about mold, it's clear that I'm a fun guy.
Yep, I deserve that. I deserve that.
You did.
I do. I deserve that one.
Could not pass that up. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, I did hear that the book is a labor of love. So tell me why.
Well, it's a labor of love because it's a distillation of what I've learned over a very, very long practice career. And in my practice career, I began as a fairly typical family practice physician, delivering babies, doing a little bit of surgery, working in the emergency room, having the full gamut of family practice. And I got really interested early on in helping people when we didn't seem to know enough about how to do that. And what I mean by that is I got particularly interested in my most difficult patients. You know, when someone has a strep throat and you give them a little bit of penicillin and they get well, great, that's what we're supposed to be doing. But what about the people where you make what you think is a good diagnosis and they're not getting better, and then what do you do? And part of the perversity of my personality is I really appreciate challenges and I really appreciate the opportunity to solve complicated problems or dig deeper. So it's just kind of natural for me to start taking the problems that my patients had and go, gosh, I'm not helping them very much. What else can I do that would be of value? And the first instance of this is that one of my first partners was a very, very good chiropractor. And I would watch patients go into his office with obvious neck or back pain and walk out really comfortably. I couldn't do that. And so I went to him and said, Stan, could you teach me to do a little bit of what you do? And back then, the chiropractic profession and the medical profession didn't communicate very well together. In fact, it was flat out antagonistic. And so he was a little bit reluctant, going, I know you're my friend, but you're not going to like turn me in or something for me teaching you something. And I went, absolutely not. I'm impressed about what you're doing. I want to learn what you do. And so he did teach me, and then pushed me to go to osteopathic training and craniosacral work, which I did early on in my career. And so I began to gain these skills that really helped me to do what I wanted to do, which is to help patients better and understand their illness better. And that ultimately led to my studying acupuncture, homeopathy, and then the list just goes on and on. I have an insatiable appetite to learn and to use what I'm learning in the service of helping people. So that's a long-winded way of starting the story of, as my practice evolved, I began to get referrals from my colleagues from their most complicated patients. And that pushed me to keep learning and continue learning. So this is where I evolved to, that I began to see the patients who were the most toxic and the most sensitive. Patients who, you've all seen them, where they take a tiny dose of a homeopathic remedy and it throws them for a loop for weeks on end. They have a tiny bit of a treatment from someone and they get thrown under the bus. And I was just fascinated to understand this process, but more important, I wanted to help them. So over the years, I've acquired a great deal of experience working with patients like this, and I finally reached a point where I felt I knew enough that I should start sharing that information with my colleagues and with patients, because I thought I at least knew some ways to help these folks get better.
Yeah, it's needed. It's needed. It's needed to take a wider approach. Generally, primary care, they just don't have the time. They just can't. They're constantly bombarded by those fires, and they just have to kind of put them out. It seems like today people are sicker in general. I don't remember people being this sick. Some of it maybe is that we have so much media around us. We have so many attachments to the news and to social media, et cetera. We hear more, or there's more openness about support groups, et cetera. But to me, it just seems like people are sicker. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, granted, I'm getting referrals of the sickest of the sick, so my perspective is jaded. However, even those patients are much, much, much sicker now than the ones I was seeing 15 or 20 years ago. And I believe, and I'm not the only one who feels that way, that we are seeing way sicker patients and many more of them. Chronic fatigue syndrome has become an epidemic. Fibromyalgia is an epidemic. Lyme disease is now a documented epidemic. Mold toxicity probably affects 10 million people in this country right now. And so the burning question is, we didn't see this 30 years ago. And I've been practicing long enough that I can say, we almost never saw this that long ago. Why are we seeing it now? And my answer to you is because the world that we live in has become increasingly toxic on every level. We have increasing levels of chemicals heavy metals, electromagnetic, toxicity of information, the way information comes. You alluded to that. If you turn on the news, which I urge my patients not to do, if you turn on the news, you will be instantly bombarded with a slew of negative things coming down. Fires, rapes, murders. It starts that way and goes downhill from there. And that is literally polluting the minds of the people that we are working with. Life is stressful enough. Dealing with the stresses of a toxic environment is something that many people aren't aware of and can't even conceive of, but it's there. So if we don't wake up, and I mean now, I don't think we have 50 years. If we don't wake up now and change our environment and change the way we think and the way we relate to the media, and even allow electromagnetic energies into our lives, this is tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Everyone's going to be sick. No one is immune here.
No, not anyone. You know, there's a city in West Virginia that does not allow any EMFs. You can't have a cell phone. People go there for a few months to kind of detoxify from that. And then they're able to go back to their home, but not forever. They have to then turn around. And it's kind of like their cleansing area that they can go to. And that's interesting, because who would have thought of that, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago? Who knew?
Well, these electronic devices have insidiously insinuated themselves into our world. It's not that I'm being negative about it. I'm using that to talk to you right now. I use these devices to write my books. I use these devices to communicate. But it's taken over in such a way that we all have images of children glued to their cell phones.
Yeah.
Adults, I go out to dinner and I see couples, each of which are glued to their cell phone, talking to each other, not sharing, not taking a moment to be together. And our whole culture has been so taken over by our obsession with what if a message came in, what if I don't answer it instantly, that I don't think we recognize how harmful this has become for our spiritual and emotional well-being.
It is. We're a slave to our cell phones. There are a few restaurants that offer boxes, and when you go in, you actually put your cell phone in the box, and that way you can't see it, use it, whatnot. I think that's pretty neat. It's really bringing awareness to what we're actually not doing anymore, and that is talking.
Right.
I think that's hard. But, in your book, you talk about an overlap of sensitivity, toxicity. And for me, it's hard to understand which is which. So how do you tell which team someone's playing on, the toxic team or the sensitive team?
Well, there is an overlap, so it can be hard to see. However, sensitive really is talking about how the nervous system itself has become hardwired or hotwired to become more reactive to virtually anything. And because of our own unique biochemistry or genetics, we'll do that in different ways. So for some people, that sensitivity may show up as a sensitivity to light, sound, touch, EMFs, food, chemicals, all of the above, any combination of the above. But the central feature of sensitivity is that the nervous system is overreacting to stimuli that it typically would not. Light, for example. I mean, we live in light, so what's the big deal? But if living as I normally have, I'm sitting in this room right here, I've got a small light bulb in front of me right here, and I'm comfortable. But if I were light sensitive, I might actually have to wear sunglasses in my own home, because that light would be overreacting and driving my nervous system to to freak out, if you will. And sound will do the same thing.
Do people just can't tolerate it?
Can't tolerate it. Their nervous system is going, ah.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I do see people from time to time not taking their sunglasses off in indoors, and I have yet to put that association together. So that's real important. I never really thought of it. I just thought either they were, being lazy, or they just they forgot to take them off. But now I understand.
I mean, for some people it's a shtick, and for other people,
a shtick.
they can't tolerate that light.
Right.
But that's sensitivity.
Right.
Toxicity is where there is actually a substance in your body that is poisoning you. Now, that can take the shape of sensitivity, meaning a toxin can make you sensitive, but a toxin can do a whole lot more than that in terms of it can prevent your body from detoxifying. Sort of a vicious spiral, so that the toxin can make it harder for you to get rid of that toxin, which will make you ultimately more toxic as that toxin accumulates. But a toxin will directly affect your liver, your gallbladder, your brain, your lungs, your bladder, your intestines. All of those organs will be literally inflamed as much as poisoned by it. So that's technically the difference. If you can tease them apart, it helps to understand whether you're dealing with toxicity or sensitivity, or for many people, both.
Does a toxic person look different than a sensitive person?
Interesting question.
I think I'm picturing the sensitive person being like very closed, like, one of these covering the eyes, or they're sensitive, they're just here. Whereas a toxic person looks so sick.
A little of both.
Okay.
And they can overlap. So yeah, I've had people come into my examination room insisting that the lights are off, and they'll huddle up on the treatment table. They can't sit on a chair, and they're wrapped up in a blanket. And that's the way we conduct our evaluation to start with. And I've had sensitive people sit in the chair, but be very, very jumpy. And the slightest bit of sound in another room will make them jump or be irritable or start looking around. So there are ways of seeing that.
So how do you, when you talk about teasing those apart, how do you begin to tease it apart? Is it a combination of what you see, what you test for, the patient's symptoms?
All of the above, but the first and primary way is symptomatically. Is simply you ask people, okay, what's going on in as much detail as you can. And here, for example, if you are a physician working in an HMO group and you have 7 minutes or 15, with the patients that I treat, you can't even begin to get to first base here.
No.
Because this takes time. It takes me an hour and a half to 2 hours for a new patient evaluation, because these folks have a whole lot going on, and I need to hear the details if I can start honing in on what's wrong with them.
Right. Sometimes it's difficult with people who've been sick for a long time, because you have to continuously move them along, because kind of they get stuck and they reiterate the same thing. And you have to come up with that nice way to say, I hear what you're saying. I think that's good. Now tell me more about X,
Right.
Because otherwise they're ruminating. They're stuck right there, and you just got to kind of move them along, or you're not going to be able to get most of what they're trying to explain to you.
Right. Now that's different. It's one thing for someone to tell me in detail what their symptoms are, and I will delve into it. But it's another when a patient feels compelled to give you their whole story, blow by blow, and they become very irritated with me if I don't want to hear every detail. And most of them are fairly convinced that I have to hear this story in every detail or I won't be able to help them. And it's very hard for me to convince them. I've heard this story not once, but 2,000 times or more. So they're not open to hearing that. And you're absolutely correct that moving them forward is very difficult. Those patients generally are less inclined to get well, by the way.
Right. I'm just thinking the same thing.
Their visit is about telling me the story. And until they feel that they have, and they will need to tell me that story next time and the time after. These are people who are stuck in their, I'll call it their story. They're stuck in an almost obsessive fixation on how this evolved. And they're generally not open to moving it forward. They just want you to hear their story and feel for them.
Do you think people in their circle are not hearing them or allowing them to vent this information? Do you think they're, are they not supportive? Do you see those type of people come in and they're alone, or, are there indications that they just aren't being validated?
I don't think so. They would tell you that. But I've worked with thousands of people like that. And to be very honest, I screen all new patients with a phone consultation first. And if someone has that pressured need to tell me the story, I will not take them as a patient.
Oh, how do you handle that?
I just tell them I'm very sorry for what they've been through, but I'm not the one who will be able to help them. I hope they'll be able to find someone who can help them, but I will not be able to do that.
Okay.
It's not on them, nor do I tell them that. These patients are generally not, how can I put it, mindful or conscious of what they're doing. If I could help them, it would be to somehow communicate that your burning need to tell the story is your stuck place. Until you can move on to, okay, how do I treat this? How do I fix it? How do I diagnose it?
Mm-hmm.
If you're ready to move on, I'm not the guy for you. Otherwise, you're taking valuable time when I could be helping other people, and I'm not willing to do that.
Right.
I can't use those words.
Right.
I'm not a rude or mean person, and I don't think they're ready to hear it.
It might be the first time they're hearing it, but it might also be the beginning of change for them. So that's a kudos, because a lot of people wouldn't, say that to someone. And I think it's important, because I know of people, I've talked to people that actually become their illness. They really hone in on that, and it's unfortunate, in that. As part of my intake, when I talk to people, I do a free consultation in the beginning and just kind of hear what's going on and what type of people they are. And we don't necessarily take just the people that, like you have, I would be shaking in my boots to take care of someone that you're trying to take care of. But we do a lot of healthy people who are trying to really improve their endurance, their health, their, fitness, just things like that, or they're protecting their brain for the future. And I do ask them, I ask them, what's the percentage that you're in the game here? Because if they are not telling me that they are with us, 100%, they're going to give it their all, give them this whole disclaimer about we can't make changes for you, etc. And I think that it at least opens up something that says that, hey, you know what? These people want to help me, and I got to take part in this. So I'm hoping that that's a right beginning. We could talk in another 3 months, and I'm saying, oh, that didn't even make a difference, because I've got 10 people that are really holding back their healing. So,
well, and I don't want to take this conversation out of context. The ones I'm talking about with you, Cindy, are rare. They're not, most patients are not like that, And I don't want listeners to think, oh my goodness, am I doing that? That's not what I'm saying. We happen to be talking about something that I'm finding fascinating, and I'm hoping that I can provide people with some background. So if you are hearing a stuck story, that's a sign that healing will be moving that person off of that stuck place. But that is not the majority of the people that I or anybody else sees. And most of the people who seek me out really do want to get help, and happily, I'm able to give them that help.
Well, that's good. That's good. You know, so we're living in a toxic world. Our environment is toxic. The air we breathe is toxic. The food we eat can be toxic. Not everybody's sick from this.
Yet.
People may have yet. And I know that. I read that and I said he's absolutely true in saying that, because something, you know, the balance, you're in that scale thing. You got to try to keep homeostasis here. But on a general basis, you know, let's talk about detoxification. How does one's body detoxify? What are the elements of our bodies that are providing detoxification?
Okay. And so for listeners, first of all, I do go into this in some detail. I have a whole chapter on this in my book.
Yes, you do.
But having said that, basically we have a number of organs whose job it is to get rid of these toxins for us. And most of our listeners will know, of course, it's the liver, whose main job it is to process toxins, and that then goes to the gallbladder. Then those toxins go through the intestines. The kidneys process the toxins. The skin process toxins by sweating it out. And the lungs process toxins by breathing it out. And we have what's called a lymphatic system, which is a circulatory system within our body that, again, mobilizes these toxins and helps us to get rid of it. So we've got all of these things working for us to help us detoxify. And if we take care of our body and we keep it healthy, it'll do a pretty good job even living in a toxic world. But we do need to pay increasing attention to do that, because it's not as simple as life used to be 50 years ago, where we need to now ask questions. How good is the air I breathe? How clean is the water that I drink? What foods am I putting in my body? Am I putting in my body preservatives or foods that are GMO raised? Am I getting Roundup in my body?
Glyphosate.
Exactly. Chemicals. What kinds of exposure do I have to them? You know, I find, you know, if I go into a hotel room, I'm put off by people who spray a scent or try to make me think it smells good in here. I don't. I feel like you're adding chemicals to my environment that my liver is going to have to deal with now. Thank you very much. I'd really rather not do that.
Right. People don't understand. You know, they think a pleasant smell from, you know, candles or air freshener, like you said, or your laundry or your, you know, fabric softener, all of these wonderful things. It's not a healthy way to enjoy a scent. A healthy way to enjoy a scent is either the natural way through the fruits, the oils, that kind of way, things that you know where it came from. It's I don't know, the products that are out there. I had no idea until a while back when I started thinking and learning about all this, that we really, 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 really need to do something about ourselves. And we have to start in our homes.
Right.
We can't
we need
control.
To start. We're deluged or bombarded with advertisements that if you want to smell fresh, use this air freshener or detergent or Bounce or something. And then you watch these people taking in these, that's beautiful. And I see that and I go, oh my God.
I know.
Fresh clothing is what dries on the line outside in the sunshine. And that's fresh clothing, not this artificial scent that we've come to take in as a truth. Oh yes, I'll use this chemical and it will smell fresh to me.
They're uneducated. These people are uneducated. They have no idea that scent is not just something that just goes in your nose and out. It's something that actually it creates a milieu in your body, and you have to do something more about that.
Right. There are chemicals that are absorbed into your body. Most of my chemically sensitive patients, and that's most of my patients, will be unbelievably sickened by even a whiff of many of these scents. So for those other people who are going, well, that's fine. I still like these scents and I want them in my world. Please understand that an increasing high percentage of people out there in this world, you will be making them sick if you wear those scents even on your clothing. Right. And so it's not just about you. We live in an increasingly, in a world with more and more billions of people. And these other people are relying on you to not make them sick. And so please understand that a scent-free world would be unbelievably helpful to many of the people that I treat increasingly.
Right. So let's start off the beginning of life. We've got this new baby. Can't get purer than that, I don't think, right? And then the environment happens, and then the food, and then the clothing, and the flame retardancy, and these other things that are in there, and then we're off to a really bad start. Where does that become a huge problem? And I know you're going to say right away, but a lot of people can handle more for a period of time. And is there a reason for that? Is that a genetic predisposition that allows them?
Well, there's genetics and there's individual biochemistry, and a family history of what your family can or can't do. It depends on that house that you're born into. If your parents are aware of the kinds of things we're talking about and your exposure is limited, then you can go a lot longer before it begins to overload your systems and you can't get rid of it anymore. So no, it's not a problem at birth generally. Yes, you get born with a cushion. That cushion may last you a very long time if your genetics are good, or you may run out of cushion within the first year, and you may start to get asthma or eczema or other reactions that are happening to some of the things in your environment. So it's not instantaneous, but the choices that parents make do have an important effect on how their child emerges into the toxic world that we're talking about. And let me rush to say, I know I'm stressing toxicity. That's more as a wake-up call to the audience to start thinking about it and to support any measures on the ballot that promote cleaning up our environment. Absolutely, we must bear the cost of it because our world depends on it. However, we still live, and I don't want people to lose sight of it, we live in a wonderful world where we have phenomenal opportunities for every type of artistic and educational pursuit imaginable. We are born into a world where opportunities are incredible. This is a wonderful world that we are creating, but we've got to be smart about...
We have to own it, right? We have to own this.
Yes.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Botanical medicines are an important part of the Integrative Lyme disease program. Biocidin from Biobotanical Research is a professional strength broad-based program that has been extensively researched for effectiveness as nutritional support in Lyme and co-infections. Ask your practitioner about Biocidin LSF and visit biocidin.com. Master Supplements specializes in probiotic enzymes and fiber that support digestion. Their products provide results that you can feel working within 60 days or a money-back guarantee. Their staff is available to help you decide which products and programs are right for you. Visit master-supplements.com or call 800-926-2961 for more info.
if you were to say, okay, healthy people, you still should be in mind, have in mind what your environment, etc. But are there a few things that people can do on a daily basis to try to promote detoxification?
Of course there are.
Well, I know, but we're doing a podcast, so that's why I have to ask you these things.
Yeah. Well, okay. So first of all, sweating is a great way to get rid of toxins. Any form, exercise, hot bath, hot shower, sauna, hot tub, any sweating on a regular basis is a great way to detoxify. Keeping water and food that is the healthiest that we know of. So I'm a big fan of eating organic and being careful about the water that you drink, that it's not stored in plastics, so you're not getting some of those plastic effects going through there. And supporting the health of the organs that I've mentioned that are key in detoxifications. Drinking a lot of water, flushing things through the kidney, helping your liver out, not having too much alcohol, which puts a strain on it. These are just basic.
Right. No, that's a good thing because, even people that aren't dealing with Lyme disease are often write to me and ask me questions and tell me, this is great. It's great for good knowledge, but that's important to hear because people, well, what do I do? What do I do? And that's exactly what you should do. Would you associate cognition change, whether it be feeling foggy or memory issues or word find problems? Is that an association with a mold issue or inflammation or both?
Well, mold is inflammation. Mm-hmm. So keep in mind that you can have allergy to mold, which people have known about for a long time. But that's not the same as toxicity from mold, which is a whole different critter. And mold toxin produces inflammation quite similar to the inflammation of Bartonella, particularly, and Lyme. So cognitive issues are huge in the mold world, but also in other toxic exposures, and also Babesia, Bartonella, Lyme, many other infectious agents will produce cognitive issues. Dale Bredesen has done some wonderful work in his book, The End of Alzheimer's. I don't know if you're familiar with Dale's work.
Yeah, I have heard of it. I have.
He's a neurologist who wrote this wonderful book called The End of Alzheimer's, in which he came from the laboratory but recognized a different cause of Alzheimer's than most everyone is working on, and realized that if you could remove inflammation in the body from a wide variety of sources, you could theoretically cure Alzheimer's. And then he proved it. He wrote a series of papers starting around 2012 with first a small number of patients. Just recently this year, last year actually, 2018, published a paper with other neurologists on 100 patients treated with his protocol, all of whom improved profoundly with Alzheimer's, which other people have viewed until now as untreatable. And one of the biggies, two biggies in Bredesen's world, are mold and Lyme.
Really?
So if you treat the mold and if you treat the Lyme, many people who have been diagnosed as Alzheimer's recover completely. And what we called Alzheimer's wasn't. It was mold toxicity.
Really?
So this is big.
Yeah, it sounds very, very big. Do you think most people should be screened for mycotoxins?
Well, I don't know about most people, but if someone has the symptoms of mold toxicity, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I don't mean like at your annual physicals. I'm just saying people who are just dealing with things that are not improving, or they just aren't well and they're back and forth. I mean, generally, what's the biggest visit to doctors for outside of back pain? It's really fatigue. Correct. And the world is tired. Everybody's tired. Well, everybody makes excuses for why they're tired, but could they be having some underlying issue that's driving inflammation that are causing, and we've got to talk a little bit about inflammation, because that is a critical component of why people are not well when they're having other things that are probably promoting it. So, back to the question, we should eliminate mold as a problem or a source of inflammation when people are not getting well. True?
A huge one. There's estimated that 10 million people in this country are to some extent mold toxic. That's not a small number. I would say that every patient who's diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease must be checked for mold and Lyme because they're treatable. And Alzheimer's is a nasty illness if it's not treated early and correctly.
Right.
But a couple of comments there. First of all, in one of my earlier books, Healing is Possible, it reviews all of the common causes of things that make people fatigued. That's really the issue of it. It talks about adrenal issues, thyroid, sex hormones, magnesium deficiency, intestinal dysbiosis, intestinal issues, hypoglycemia, mold toxicity, Lyme, dental issues, and so on. So that's a good overview.
That gave me a whole list of things to check off. That's a lot.
It is. But the new book takes that a step further into what kinds of things should people be thinking about. And that book is called Toxic: Heal Your Body from Mold Toxicity, Lyme Disease, Multiple Chemical Sensitivities, and Environmentally Acquired Illness. And what I've tried to do in that book is make it approachable so that anyone who is suffering from complicated illness and complicated symptoms can see that there is a blueprint of how to diagnose it and how to treat it. And the take-home message is it's treatable.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked the book a lot because it's systematic. It's you were very good about saying, if you're not a medical professional or don't have a biochemical background, this might be too much for you. But at least you're not presumptive that everybody knows what you know. And you also make it nice for people to, even if it is big league stuff, to kind of put it into words that people can understand. So that is really, really. I think it's just going to be so helpful. For me, it's going to be a new Bible.
Sure.
Amen. Amen, I say to you.
Thank you. But that's scary putting it in that category.
That's okay. I heard a funny one yesterday about someone of just not very knowledgeable or not worldly or not very... I don't even want to say any other disclaimer there, but was the talk about didn't know what Lord and Taylor was, Lord and Taylor, the store, etc. Thought maybe it was Jesus and his girlfriend. So we have to be very careful. It takes all types, doesn't it? Okay, segue. Tell me about CDR and what does that mean?
Okay, that was not a good segue, Cindy, but...
I know. I think I got myself in a hot water there, but I just thought it was really cute. But CDR, what does it stand for?
It stands for the Cell Danger Response.
You know what it also means? It's the Commission on Dietetic Registration.
Cool.
I just wanted to let you know, because if this CDR in your light, is not taken, you better run and patent it as fast as you can.
It's not my term.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead. All right. But it sounds very important.
It is important. Cell danger response is a model created by a fabulous biochemist, geneticist named Bob Naviaux. He's an MD, PhD, who teaches, he's a full professor at the University of California, San Diego Medical School. And Bob's been working in this area for quite some time. He's been studying in depth the biochemistry of chronic fatigue and autism and most other chronic conditions. And over years, he began to realize that there was an underlying theme in all of these inflammatory illnesses. And that inflammatory theme started on a cellular level. So the cell danger response is a description of how a cell reacts to a threat. And if that threat can be an infection, or that threat can be a toxin, but either way, the instant the cell perceives that it is under threat, mitochondria, which are the little organelles, the parts of the cell that have to do with our metabolism and make energy for us, the mitochondria are the part of the cell that sense that danger and immediately send signals to the cell, which send signals to other cells of basically danger.
Danger.
So the cell danger response is an orchestrated response to any type of danger in which the body is attempting to fight off that danger by going through some biochemical shifts and changes. And it's way beyond the scope of what we're talking about to go over it in detail. But the bottom line is the cell won't allow healing until it doesn't feel threatened anymore. So until it can turn off that car alarm, until it can turn it off, you can't get well. So
this is a big cascade, though, aren't you? Aren't you talking about this is a whole cascade?
Correct. So particularly, this relates to the conditions we've been talking about right now. And what I mean by that is, if you have a very complicated medical illness, be it Lyme disease, co-infection of Lyme, mold toxicity, fibromyalgia, it doesn't matter. Virtually any complicated illness, the take-home message from the cell danger response conceptualization is you can try to fix all of the downstream imbalances. Let me be clear. So if you have these conditions, you are going to be having difficult with mitochondria. We call that mitochondrial dysfunction. You're going to have that. You won't methylate very well. Your biochemistry is going to be screwed up. Your adrenal glands are going to be messed up. Your thyroid is going to be messed up. You won't make sex hormones properly. Your immune system is not going to operate properly. If you attempt to fix what I'm calling downstream issues, like fix the adrenal, fix the thyroid, fix methylation, it won't work if you don't fix what's causing the danger in the first place. And I think that's the super important take-home message, which is you have to identify the threat and fix the threat, then all of those interventions will begin to work for you.
Right. So you have to go after the enemy before you deal with all the casualties.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah. So you're talking about the infections, the mold, those type of things that are really promoting or driving this inflammation.
Exactly. Those are generally, in my sick patients, what's driving it. Your terminology is excellent.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's so nice to hear. I want to change topics here. You devoted an entire chapter to something that actually fascinates me, and it's on the possibility of a spiritual awakening after dealing with such a long illness for several people. It's certainly an important issue to address, and I know a lot of people really don't do that, and I think that you talking about it is an important thing for people to realize that you're quite a compassionate person. And without recognizing this in ourselves or our patients, I don't think that people can really heal because they have to be given reasons. They have to show how important it is for them to be positive in order for their bodies to heal. So where did this come from? Where did you notice this, and how do you promote this with your patients?
Well, I think I've known it my whole practice career. I was lucky enough to, when I was in medical school at the University of Chicago, the teacher who impressed me the most and had the greatest impact on me was Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Oh, really?
Who wrote the definitive book on death and dying.
Absolutely. Well known.
And every Wednesday, from noon to 1:30, she interviewed with or talked with a patient. Back in those days, we didn't have these cameras. We had a little room with a two-way mirror. So a whole bunch of us medical students crowded into this tiny little room, and we watched how she talked with patients and how she elicited a history. And she was my role model for compassion, embodied, personified, and watching her made it very clear how important the emotional and spiritual aspects of health were. So from that starting point, I think it became easy to see how relevant it was in all of my, and through my whole practice career. Now, one of the things that I've observed particularly is that when someone's been sick for a very long time, they unconsciously begin to exhibit what I will call invalid behaviors, where they've begun to rely heavily on other people to help them. And while this is understandable, over time, this becomes a habit. And many patients don't recognize that they have lost the focus of their actual life. I'll call it their true life. And they now are living their illness, not living their life.
Right.
And
they become their illness. That's their whole being.
Correct. They're in chat rooms. They talk about it. They think about it. Yeah. They obsess about it. And at some point, as my patients get better, it becomes obvious to me we have to talk about this. Because if you're going to make the next step from being better to being well, you're going to need to embrace wellness and health and really begin to look at, okay, why are you here and what do you want to do with your life? What gives your life meaning and purpose? How are you going to accomplish that? And most patients who've been sick for a long time are afraid of, in fact, flat out terrified that, oh my God, I've been sick for 10 years. Now what am I going to do with my life? I'm so behind the eight ball. Can I resume my career? Can I take on responsibilities? What if I can't? And they reach what I call a decision point, in which either they embrace the possibility that it's going to be difficult and scary, but they are going to embrace what they're going to be doing on this planet, and they go for it. Or they go, this is too frightening, too terrifying. I can't really get well here because I don't think I can face up to my potential. And you might think at first glance that, well, why wouldn't a person want to be well? Wow, if you have faced with the opportunity to be well versus not, it actually turns out it's a much more complicated and difficult choice to make than you might think. But that point, that juncture, that fulcrum of decision of, okay, am I going to go for it? I've been getting disability payments. What if those stop?
Oh, yeah.
Am I going to be able to earn the money that I need for myself and my family to keep us going? These are not, I don't want to seem to make this simple. It's a hard decision to make. But those that embrace healing and wellness almost all undergo what I will call a spiritual transformation. They're not the same as they were before. Their type A-driven behavior has changed. They can stop and smell the roses or the coffee. They've changed to be able to appreciate the gift of health. They appreciate every day, moment to moment. This is so cool. I couldn't think my way out of a paper bag last year, and now I'm here working on the computer. I'm doing valuable things. I'm taking care of my family. I'm taking care of my responsibilities. This is great. So that's the kind of a transformation I'm really talking about.
Isn't that, it's almost frightening to think that you have to plan emotionally to be well after you have been struggling emotionally being sick. So I think that's important. I think that's an important point to give people about what, even if they're journaling or they're filling out some sort of a symptom questionnaire on a regular basis, just plotting it out, seeing what they're able to accomplish, how they feel, maybe where they have a couple setbacks, but being positive, from the provider's point of view, saying, hey, look at what you're doing great. And then encouraging them to do things that are helpful. Are they socializing? Do they have any social people, family, friends that are involved? Do something separate from your illness. Get off of these Facebook groups. You're just bringing yourself down. Do something. Maybe you need a new hobby, something that isn't very physical, maybe learning something, some sort of something. I don't know. I'm going to think of crocheting and knitting and something. But put yourself into more positive, enjoyable things. That's got to be hard for some people. They must still, say they're resistant about that.
Yeah, do something life-affirming as opposed to something that's literally sucking the spiritual and emotional energy out of you. This is not a new concept. I'm thinking of back in the Old Testament. Moses had to let 40 years pass before the children of Israel could learn how to change from slave mentality into freedom.
Right.
You can't just automatically shift from a habitual type of consciousness into something where it's wide open. The world is your oyster and you can do anything you want to do. But getting there from a behind the eight ball is a much harder journey than many people realize.
It's obviously the person's own decision to move forward in a positive way. But I really think it's the provider, the practitioner's responsibility to assist in that sort of healing. Just as much as we want them to heal in a physical sense, we've got to really empower them to make changes, to believe in themselves so that they can move past this illness and be a new person, like you said, really have that awakening. Agree?
Yes.
We don't even have to agree to disagree. All right. Well, before we end, I do have a couple questions, and I was thinking about this, and we know that a fair percent, about up to 65% of our body is water. And then depending on people's physique, whether they're heavier, they're not. I'm just wondering if body or / fat composition contributes to toxicity. Meaning, is someone who is quite heavy and has a lot of fat, are they able to store more toxins before they're able to eliminate them? Or is it all about the process of just being able to excrete it because your body's doing it efficiently?
Well, I think it's a simple truth that the more fat tissue you have, the more toxins you can store, because we do store toxins in fat tissue. On the other hand, I don't want people who are overweight to think that you can't do this journey because, God, thousands of people that I've worked with have done that.
Yeah, that we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. So if you were to say, okay, people are listening to me, they're dealing with practitioners, they want to be educated, they're going to buy your book because they want to hear all this, they want to read it, they want to keep this to know what's happening and what they should be educating themselves on. If you could say, okay, the top 4 or 5 things I want to know or I want to do with a brand new patient, can you list those for me?
Gosh, I wish the world was as simple as that.
Well, no, because I know you're going to say to me, find what is causing this. Yes, we talked about the infection.
Right. So the essence of all of my visits with patients starts with what is the diagnosis, or more correctly, diagnoses. Mm-hmm. What are all of the things that are impacting this person and let me put it in order so that I can decide what needs to be treated first, second, third, fourth. If you fix the causative things, the body has the capacity to heal itself eventually. So you don't have to attack the downstream things from the get-go. The body will fix it themselves once you take away the impediments to healing. So what are the impediments to healing? Is there an infection? Is there a toxin? Is there an emotional blockage? Is there a spiritual blockage? Is there an energetic blockage? Is there a financial blockage? What are the impediments to healing? And then let's treat those, whatever they are for that patient, and they're all different, so everybody's treated differently.
Right, but when people have chronic inflammation, and that's what we're going to say, everything has been treated. We've looked at the possibility of mold. We've looked at the possibility of heavy metals, but the person still is achy, fatigued, and they're, status quo, but they're not where they want to be. They always say, gee, I'm just not quite on my game. Where do you go with that?
Boy, a different place with every patient.
Yeah, this is a hard thing. I know.
Yeah, most of the people that I treat get well. And all I can share is that the model that I use helps the majority of the people that I work with. There are still people that have done everything that I've asked them to do, and they are still not well. And for them, I don't know, is there an entity that I have not learned about yet that they have that I haven't treated because nobody has identified it yet?
Mm-hmm.
Or is the blockage more in the emotional and spiritual area and they haven't dealt with that yet? And it's very important for us not to blame patients who aren't getting better doing everything that I ask them to do, which is this whole field is in its infancy, and we still don't know enough that we can say, I have done everything that can be done. What I can say is I've done everything that I know how to do, but we may be missing something here. If I am not helping an individual, and no one I've ever known has helped everyone they've ever treated, me included, find somebody else to work with who has other thoughts, other ideas. Maybe you have parasites that you have not dealt with. Maybe you have an occult viral infection that has not been dealt with, and on and on and on and on. Maybe there is a toxin that we don't know how to measure yet. And we're constantly finding new viruses and bacteria that we had never heard of before. Maybe you've got one of those. So one should always give patients hope, even if we are not solving their problem. At some point, if I've worked with someone for a very long time and they're not making progress, it becomes obvious to me that you need to find someone else to take another stab at this. I'm not getting there. And usually what patients tell me is, oh, but you care. And I'll go, that's true, but caring apparently is not sufficient. That I do care, but I'm not on the right wavelength to help fix whatever it is that's making you sick. Maybe it's a dental problem. Maybe you've got cavitations. Maybe you've got some things that I haven't even looked for, identified, but please work with someone else so you can get some fresh ideas going here. Right.
Well, that's quite an amazing, quite an amazing journey that you've been on. And it's been a blessing for me to be able to talk with you about this, because as I'm on not only my own personal healing road, but helping other people, and this has certainly been more than a pleasure, and I do want to thank you. And I know that in your book, one of the nicest things that I found is all of the stories from the people and their paths that they've that you've walked them through. And I think that's an exceptional way for your book to really find room in people's own stories and just fulfilling their desire to see some really good, things come out. Because like you said, everything is bad. Everything is bad. People love bad news, travels fast, etc. But it's wonderful. So after going through your book, etc., I do want to propose that you honor me with a medical degree of some sort. You can put whatever initials you want, and so then I'm going to now know that I'm a graduate of the School of Neil Nathan. And so I do want to let you know that I'm working on a minor of the Bob Miller minor. That one's going to take me a little bit more time. So it's been very fascinating, and I really want to thank you, and I wish you good luck in your future.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Thank you for having me today.
It's awesome. It's awesome. All right. For all my listeners out there, this has been Dr. Neil Nathan, and we've been talking about his book, Toxic. If you haven't read it, please do so, because it's going to help you. You can bring it with you. You can share it with your providers. It's definitely my new Bible. Take good care. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Living with Lyme. We'd like to take another moment to thank our sponsors. Botanical medicines are an important part of an integrative Lyme disease program. Biocidin from Biobotanical Research is a professional strength, broad spectrum formula that has been extensively researched for effectiveness as a nutritional support in Lyme and co-infections. University studies have shown that this combination of plant medicines is also effective on biofilms that may be hampering treatment, as well as providing broadly acting herbal support. The liposomal form of biocidin, called biocidin LSF, is used by Lyme literate physicians such as Dr. Richard Horowitz and Dr. Jill Carnahan. Ask your practitioner about biocidin LSF and visit biocidin.com for more information. Master Supplements. Does living with Lyme ever get overwhelming and finding the right support seem difficult? Well, Master Supplements can help. Master Supplements specializes in probiotics, enzymes, and fiber that help support digestive and immune health during and after antibiotics. Master Supplements products provide results that you can feel working with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Their staff is available to help you decide which products and programs are right for you. Master Supplements is dedicated to science-based products with the highest standards of quality control. Visit master-supplements.com for more information, or call and talk to a team member at 800-926-2961. That's master-supplements.com or 800-926-2961. Thanks so much again for listening to Living with Lyme. We'd like to remind you that if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the podcast. You can visit our website at livingwithlyme.us so you make sure you don't miss any episodes. Until next time, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.